Welcome to episode 81 of the Coast to Coast AFL podcast, Minnick and Blaze. I am Blaze, your host, and this week we'll just be catching up on any other bits of news from the AFL men's side of things, delistings or re-signings mostly, and then we're going to dive into catching up with the AFLW, see where all 18 teams are currently sitting on the ladder and their matchups and how they've all gone. We'll talk about Richmond finally getting some wins on the board. I'm very happy for my girls. And pretty much what the finals is going to shape up to be. So let's just jump straight into it. How are you doing, Mr. Cyric?
Not too bad, not too bad. Again, as I posted on the socials, I made my way back to Fremantle. Amazingly, only for the second time. I have had some weird clashes when it's come to the AFLW this season, so I've missed out on four of the games. Only one of them was by choice. It was that rainy, miserable game
Mm-hmm.
that I just couldn't be bothered traveling to. So it was good to see the Fremantle women get a win, especially how strongly they did it against, unfortunately, your team in Richmond. But yeah, as I say, keeps their very, very slim finals chances up for the eight. But apart from that, I don't think I got up to too much. Just trying to get some personal errands sorted. Got a bit of a collaboration project that you'll see in a future day. Well, not you specifically, you know about it, but
Yes.
we'll probably mention it on here closer to the day.
Yes.
But yeah,
It's
so working
very,
towards that.
very
I'll
exciting
also,
stuff. Um,
yeah.
Not too much is going on with me at the moment. I did get to go to Richmond Collingwood last week, which was very good. I did mention that briefly on the podcast in last week's episode, but that was good to see the girls get a win there. I haven't done much this week. Um, Mostly it's also some personal errands. We were just speaking about it before we started recording. So that's something that I'm currently going through. I am working on a HSP project at the moment as well that we're looking to do on the 21st of November, which is a Friday night. I will keep you all updated on that as to when that officially gets to go ahead. Otherwise, it's just, yeah, just, chilling, maxing, relaxing, all cool. Mostly been seeing family as well. Actually, recently I went out for my cousin's birthday over the weekend, which was nice. But otherwise, yeah, just watching the AFLW where I can and keeping up with all of the news.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, haven't been as up to date on the AFLW, but there is a bit to get through when we sort out the finals that are coming up, and we'll just go through the games that have been played in that between that time period.
Yes. So we're gonna just cover some AFL men's news firstly, like mostly delistings and things of that nature that we missed out in last week's episode because they were announced after we finished recording. So we're going to start with one related to Hawthorn with young Irish talent Seamus Mitchell being delisted.
So sort of that. What was he? Very handy late pickup, wasn't he? Um,
Pick
James
29 in the
Mitchell.
2020 draft.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What was I? Oh no, I was thinking Mitch Lewis.
Yeah. I
That's
mean,
right. Mitch Lewis was the
Mitch
one that
Lewis
was
has
late.
actually come back and stepped up recently. So there you go.
No. But I was like, I remember they just picked someone that had like Mitchell's name in it really late.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, Seamus Mitchell was the sort of yeah, halfback slash midfielder, wasn't he? I can't
Yes.
really
It was a
remember,
little bit of a utility kind of player.
but yeah, the only reason I think we're going into this is because he actually does have a tiny bit of interest. I feel like it's said about everything. I think West Coast being linked to
They're
that,
always going to be
and
West
it's hard to
Coast.
tell how serious it is. But yeah, as I said, it might be another thing where one of the Victorian teams take a bit of a punt on him. But as he is played 28 games and sort of just shuffling around a bit of that depth, Hawthorn. So, um, yeah, as I said, um, yeah, honestly, you know, got some high talent off halfback. Some okay outside talent. I'm not sure if he's like really an inside or outside midfielder. I don't remember him being inside. So, um, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, it's always a little unfortunate this time of year when the younger players that are just really tried to give their all but can't break into certain sides start to kind of fizzle their way out of the system. But unfortunately, he's not the only one we have to touch on this week. Um, with our next one actually not being exactly a delisting, but more of a development coach signing. In fact, two of them with former Bulldog Liam Jones and ex-Crow Scott Thompson signed as as development coaches, I should say, to Brisbane.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, Scott Thompson was just one of those players. Uh, you know, very hard not assuming he's been signed up as a like sort of a midfield development coach. One of those very good. I think because he wasn't as talented, you know what I mean? Like when I say as talented, like not like a it was never like a five like player or anything. Like, he was picked because he was a good two-way runner and was always accountable. Um so as I said, you never know how coaching's gonna be. But he goes there and then yeah, Liam Jones. Honestly, not the player I would ever pick for like footy brain. And I know that sounds harsh for Jones, but like on field, like I know he's had a few off field things, but like on field, you wouldn't exactly pin him as like the best or smartest decision makers. But as I said, able to find his way in defense. So, you know what I mean? It's like sometimes players that have been through a bit know how to adjust. I think they tend to make better, well, not better coaches, but a different mindset to coaching because, as I said, like as much as you like to just draft talent that's able to plug and play anywhere and they're just able to do everything, like you need to be able to figure out how to be versatile with players. So maybe Liam Jones can provide that.
Yeah, possibly. Ex-Giant Daniel Lloyd, just on another bit of news on top of this, he's been a development coach for the Lions for the past 2 years, replaces Stuart Dew as a forward coach. So Brisbane just building out their coaching list a little bit more, especially with
Mm.
Stuart Dew moving over to Port Adelaide. I believe is that
Yeah.
correct?
He
Yes.
came back to home, I guess.
So yeah, good some. I mean, if Brisbane really want to go for that three-peat, may as well uh, add some more coaching to the list and get some
Yeah, I think it's
get some
just
more
always
talent.
important to, yeah, as I said, it's always important to keep things shuffling along, especially since you're always at risk of getting players poached. So to keep your lower system coaches as much as you can um, field. So if anything happens, you've always got your eye on the next people.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, football for the most part levels out. So, a few assistants from Brisbane will be highly touted as next coaches after old dynasties, basically. That tends to happen. So, yeah.
Fair enough. Next on the list, Ted Closey. I got there in the end. Ted Closey has not been offered a contract by Geelong and is officially delisted.
Yeah, Ted Closey, this isn't really a surprise. Sort of an outside player, a bit like his brother, Sam Closey, who plays for
Think they're related, yeah.
Suns. Yeah. So, yeah, as I said, you've got possibly the best, well, up towards the best outside mix in home. Well, not really homes, but you know what I mean. It's like you got pure wingers like Closey, Mana can even play outside. Mullen if he's not playing a tagging role, and you've got Bailey Smith and uh, who I would just said, Max Holmes, who can
Yes.
technically play on the wing too if they want to. So, I mean, yeah, it's just pretty hard to break in. Never really struck me as like an extremely, you know, uh, I don't see him being a high execution player, but it also, is Geelong, and it's a pretty high standard. So,
Geelong have really
yeah,
high standards for their players, and it's really hard to break into that side. But I mean, like,
yeah,
granted, 12 games after the past 3 years isn't great, but his stats that he was averaging in the VFL were pretty good. So I'm sure there's another team out there that might pick him up,
yeah, exactly. So it's just one to keep the eye on.
like
Again,
a West
um,
Coast.
West Coast. Yeah, as I said, who knows? But I don't know, oftentimes it's probably better to stay. I don't know where it's actually from. Uh, but yeah, so as I said, I imagine maybe going up to the Gold Coast, he could actually use some outside talent. And that brother appeal might actually be an option for him.
Yeah,
You know, that might be where you just take a pretty lowish contract. You get another chance. You get to be at home. You get to be with your sibling.
yeah, there's potential there. The Cats have also delisted George Stevens and Kyton Matafai Forbes, but the club has committed to redrafting them in the rookie draft, which is in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, as I said, George Stevens is like a player. I swear I've seen play, but I couldn't picture him. So, but I think he's a bit. Both of those are more project players anyway. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. All right, next on the list, some North Melbourne news with Will Phillips, Darcy Tucker, and Geordie Payne all being delisted by the Roos.
Yeah, so this one's fairly interesting because obviously, of all the delistings at this part of the season, yeah, it's probably the most high level, I would say.
Mm.
Will Phillips, former number 3 draft pick, again, very unfortunate. He joins Ed Vicker Willis in sort of high draft pick that just never turned out for North, um, as well as Darcy Tucker came over from Fremantle. I mean, they didn't pay that much for him, so he just served a role. Never really was like a game changer for North. Provide a bit on the outside, but as we said, like North and outside talent just don't mix.
Yep.
So yeah, and then as I said, Payne is just a mid-season player that they never really incorporated into their side. So as I said, they've made a lot of changes, as you pretty much need to after having such miserable seasons. So you know what I mean? It's sometimes you got to be a bit harsh because you always want to like develop. You never want to get rid of young players when you're a rebuilding team, but if you keep them around for too long, it just stifles. You just end up circling through the same players. So
Yeah.
yeah, you got to make decisions at times.
I do feel for both Tucker and Payne. Tucker especially because
Hmm.
he is an experienced player. But they delisted him after he went under for surgery on his back. Like that's the little. I mean, granted, that's just how the game goes. But that's really rough
Yeah,
to
but
like kind of say it as it is.
yeah, I mean, look, most of the times they have those sort of agreements. Like, they won't literally be like, okay, contract's ended, you don't have insurance
No, to
anymore,
be
or
fair,
something
I
like
think he
that.
did like do the surgery like 6 months ago. So,
Yeah,
but it's
exactly. So,
still like he
yeah,
put
it's
in
a
some
bit rough. But
really good efforts at the very least.
I think I never questioned his commitment. He's just not the best user of the ball, really.
Oh, a lot of North players are like
He's
that though.
Yeah, so as I said, not too surprising there. But yeah, as I said, it is. You hate to see players whilst they're injured get
I do
delisted. But
understand the pain one though because he was probably on a 1+1 being a mid-season rookie. Um,
yeah,
and yeah, he just kind of broke into the side too late in the last three games of this season and kicked three goals out of him. 3 games, 3 goals. No,
oh yeah,
not bad work, but yeah, just broke in a little too late to get that extension.
yeah, exactly. As I said, I think it was just one of those things where, yeah, Roos are probably all in on Trembath. It looks like so, and obviously when they develop Matt Whitlock, or the other Whitlock, whoever they have.
One of the
Jack.
Whitlocks. Yeah, we did.
I think we have Matt. I think they have Jack. I
I
can't
can't remember.
remember.
Anyway, next on the list.
This is like the first couple of years of like Ben and Max King.
True.
My
Oh
dad still
yeah.
mixes them around.
All right. Next on the list, Mitch McGovern getting a 1 year extension to stay at Carlton.
Honestly, it's like a bit of a surprise, but I think considering some of the other moves, I think they just have to keep Mitch McGovern.
They had to.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's going to be an okay, serviceable defender. I don't think he's going to go back into the forward line. I think they're just going to have to rebalance. But if they also had injury concerns, he is a player that can go down there. So For versatility's sake, I don't think he'll actually be best 22. But I think if there's either a rookie struggling or another injury crisis down there, he can just be used to fill in. Because again, he's not technically that old. He's just not the most informed player in the
Well,
competition at the moment.
we know Carlton were eyeing someone off in the trade period. I believe it was potentially like they were trying to take Lee Lear away from St Kilda,
Mm.
but they just couldn't get a deal done with the Giants in time. So falling back to giving Mitchell Governor an extension was kind of the only option that they had.
Yeah, exactly. And as I said, it's just one of those things where yeah, I mean, if you remember the initial trade, probably a bit before you paid attention to football, but Mitch McGovern did get paid a bag to go from Adelaide to Carlton, and it just really didn't work out. So it's sort of been good to see him like be reinvented as a defender. But yeah, as I said, he's only really had a few good seasons. I think this year would be his last year, and hopefully he can just get a nice 150 odd games to wrap up his career.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully he's able to at least get some sort of significant milestone. I mean, 100, at least, 100 games is always a good sign for a player because most players don't end up reaching 100 games. But
Mm.
150 is very good for someone who has had a lot of commitment to Carlton
Yeah.
ever since going over
And
to them.
according to his Wikipedia, after being tutored by Kamel Siolman, he is proficient at the didgeridoo.
Hey, we love little facts like that. Um,
Exactly.
all right, next on our list, three Geelong players have been given 1 year extensions. Joe Pike, Jed Hughes, and Ollie Wiltshire. Jed Hughes probably being
Yeah,
the big one.
Jed Buse is sort of just like, again, break in case of emergency sort of things. I think he was injured for parts of last season, wasn't he?
Yes, injury delayed start to 2025 and mostly got stuck in
Yeah.
the VFL.
I think, honestly, he's one of those players that I think Geelong players like sort of realize that he can be actually fairly decent. He's just like not. I mean, he's just the ultimate. He's like the one club journeyman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's like he's never really picked for much apart from his role, but he is very handy. And as I said, um, with their defense back there, as I said, it's not like they have a huge range of stocks. They're playing youngsters. They got away with it last season because they didn't have any injuries down back. But I think this is just smart. As I said, if you don't get anyone, maybe they don't. I'm not. I will have a closer look at the list profile, but yeah, just keep him around. Make sure while you're competitive that you have enough skilled players to keep a regular season going. Even if I don't think he'll be a mainstay, even coming back from injury.
Well, taking a look at this article, looks like they're trying to show that Pike is pretty much a developing rockman, so he'll eventually come to and take on that role. But Wiltshire and is just a little handy, little mature age player. Um, and yeah, obviously Jed Hughes being the slightly out of the best 22, 23, but can easily
Mm.
slot back in whenever needed.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you see late out Jed Hughes comes in, you're not panicking as a Cats fan.
No, he's a very, very handy utility player. All right, next on our list is a little bit of news on a couple of Irish players for Brisbane. Connor McKenna and Dara Joyce have been re signed for 2026. And Lincoln McCarthy has been delisted, however. The club has recommitted to picking him up in the rookie draft.
Yeah, as I said, it's very interesting. Connor McKenna, obviously, sort of bit of a weird one. Um, you know, sort of left for that year. Obviously, if you don't remember, he was a former Dons player until I can't remember. Was it?
I think he
Tw-
came
he
over
went
in
back.
23 to Brisbane.
I think he came back. No, because he left Australia for a year.
Yes, he went back home to Ireland and then came back.
Yeah, and then came back, and then they picked him up. But yeah, as I said, sort of not really breaking into the side, but still, you know, again, solid outside player. It's just, yeah, as I said, uh
He,
Berry,
he's
Bailey.
a premiership player.
Only is, but like, yeah, as I said, he's just yeah. I mean, is just a role player again. You got to keep enough to keep yourself competitive, as I said with Geelong, and as I said, Connor McKenna's that sort of person, and Link is obviously a probably more of a will do right by you rookie delisting. Um, give him another chance, but obviously at this point, you would not pay him anything but a rookie contract because he's just got a glass body. So if you've got the list spots, why not? But yeah, I would be surprised if he broke back into AFL at 2026.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. All right, next one, and this was news that dropped literally today as we're recording this. Jake Lloyd and Dane Rampy are initially delisted by the Sydney Swans, but will be picked back up yet again in the rookie draft. Pretty much accepting the fact that they will be getting a lower paycheck, but are able to still continue on their veteran careers.
Yeah, and this one's an interesting one because honestly, Dane Rampy was surprisingly bad this year.
Yeah, he had a really rough
Um,
season.
Jake Lloyd was rough in the first half, but sort of had a bit of a revival. I think he preferred when he wasn't the main focus, when Errol Gordon gave him a bit more support on the outer wing, so he could just go more that where was useful rather than having to run the whole track back and forth. So yeah, as I said, it's no surprise Sydney need to move on from these sort of players, lest they spend another season outside the eight, just due to lack of transition. So yeah, as I said, not too surprising. It's just yeah, it's a bit of a I'll be a bit of a surprise if you're not that or didn't pay that much attention to Sydney this year.
Yeah.
But if you did, yeah, as I said, it's not too much to be surprised about there.
Yeah, no, it's not really all that surprising at all. It's very, very obvious that they were both down on form this year. Sydney as a whole was very, very poorly. Had a couple of good wins here and there, but yeah, the former captain kind of having a really massive slump in his performance, even though we know he can still have great performances in the veteran era that he's currently in. It's a little rough, but hopefully 2026, sorry, will provide a little bit more juice for them, and they'll be able to at least, even if they're not getting to play in the best 22, they're able to be mentors to the younger players coming into the system.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, been around the block for so long, and as I said, a very important part of the club. So, yeah, it's just one of those things where, as I said, unfortunately, forms just let him down. I said I think Jake Lloyd will still be likely to be a mainstay. Rampy will still get games, but I think that the quicker they get some tall, solid defenders down there,
Yes.
the better.
And I believe we may have mentioned it in a previous episode, but Joel Hamling and Peter Lattams have also been re-signed by the Swans, so they at least still have a couple of backups for when required.
Yeah, as I said, Joel Hamling, again, exists. Big paper mache, but yeah, I saw something about Laddams being delisted, but he's not being re-signed with rookie, is he?
No, not via the rookie draft, it looks like. So they might have just given him a lower term contract, maybe?
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. I might have just misread it. So, yeah, Laddams. I mean, I've said my opinion on Laddams is very much a not the best decision maker on field and is okay-ish ruck at times. But I mean, for backup, Adrian Grundy makes sense.
Yeah. All right, now over to some actual AFLW news. And prior to getting into the nitty gritty of the current season at hand, we've got some news about Tasmania's introduction to the AFLW and how clubs currently in the system will be able to protect their AFLW stars from Tasmania taking their pickings.
Yes, and it's arguable to think that, it would be hard to argue that this might not be just off the back of North and their dominance in the AFLW now, they obviously pinched a fair few stars to make up their list. Yeah, as I said, so it just gives play. I think the other thing too is with the expansion clubs, I think there was a bit of a feel that teams lost a bit of identity because the players that they've been building up as poster women for their clubs just switch just like that. I mean, a lot of them, including ones that Richmond picked up, Sabrina. Yeah, at the time it was Sabrina Frederick Torb. Uh,
Brennan,
you're gonna hate me,
Conti.
and then thank you, Conti as well. That said, the Bulldogs really got pilfered.
Yes.
So honestly, it's not that big a surprise to think that they're gonna protect, but it's gonna be hard because, as I said, I think for one team it's not too bad, but the AFL has a parity problem, or AFLW has a parity problem, so I'm glad that they're taking steps. I think it is going to be a hard introduction. Again, if it does go forth, again, I still think that it's worth saying that you can't just assume Tasmania is going to get in, considering some of the things about them and the logistics. But I think this is a pretty smart step. As I said, you gotta allow clubs to protect their superstars whenever a new club comes in, like
Agreed.
at least one or two. So
The fact that this wasn't done initially when the AFLW first expanded is really interesting, but I'm glad they're bringing it in now, especially with now that we have 18 clubs and a huge variety of talent across all 18 teams. Even if some of the teams are performing as well as teams like North are doing, being able to have this what they're calling a sliding scale from the teams at the bottom are able to protect more of their players, and the teams at the top maybe not have as many options. It is really interesting to look at it like that, especially with how they're classing it as, is that Tassie will be able to sign any player that isn't protected under that, essentially as a free agent, regardless of their contract status.
Yeah, exactly. So as I said, I think that was the other thing is it was a weird thing where actually a lot of outer clubs, out of state clubs fared a lot better, like your Fremantles, your Adelaides, your Brisbanes. Hard to say GWS, but you know, because as I said, a lot of the teams I brought in were Victorians, whereas Carlton Bulldogs. Here's the other one. Got a few players pinched as well. Carlton Bulldogs, Collingwood.
Collingwood, yes. Chloe Malloy was taken from Collingwood.
Yeah, so mainly the Bulldogs, but as I said, the others still got a fair few pinched.
Yes. They're in terms of the draft, their concessions are very similar to what the men's team is getting for their introduction to the AFL. So they'll be getting like a variety of picks, and some of them they will have to trade off to other teams, either for players or for their picks, essentially to go lower down the draft, for example. But essentially, it seems like most clubs kind of agree that the process is okay and kind of better established than previous history situations. But it's still kind of it still kind of remains to be seen how this is going to be executed in the next couple of months, essentially.
Yeah, because I said, like, it's as much as I said, it's so easy to say in hindsight that we could have predicted that North Melbourne would be a powerhouse club, and I did think they would be top for a long time. As I said, it's just the fact that everything just sort of went right for them, and I think it just added to where it snowballed into them just being the juggernaut that they are now. As I said, it's probably a good time to say that they have, between the times we've done this, tied the men's record for the most consecutive AFL wins in a row at 23, and have a chance to finish off the season with 24, breaking the record. So we'll talk about that later.
We will. It's definitely going to be really interesting to see how this season will finish, and how I'm not entirely sure. There we go. 2028, I should say, is when the Devils are going to be introduced to the AFLW. So the system still has a couple of years to try and figure out um how they're going to protect their players, and how the introduction of a 19th team to both leagues is going to be handled.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, next on our
Um,
list is time to look at the actual AFLW games. Do you remember what round we initially got
round
up to?
7.
That's what I thought. All right,
Yeah.
let's start there.
Uh, we're going back in the memory banks here, and again, some of these weeks I didn't watch that much because there was PAX week and there was another weeks where I was occupied. But from this round,
Oh, this
there was
was
a
this was grand final week. So these were
yeah,
the
it
games that
was
were mostly
actually.
held in Melbourne, especially on the
Hmm.
Friday, thanks to the grand final Friday public holiday. Thank you. Um, and then on this Sunday as well, because obviously the Saturday was cut off due to the AFL men's grand final.
Yeah. So the biggest thing was obviously the Geelong Hawthorn game, pretty much the only real memorable game of this round. Apparently that I didn't watch it because it was my birthday. But apparently it was a very memorable back and forth game. The lead only changing late, and then it was a bit of keepy offies late. Um, Shaped a bit of the season. Hawthorn put their top two prospects in line where it sort of sunk the Cats, who were struggling up at that point,
Mm-hmm.
to only minor contentions in finals. Melbourne absolutely thrashed the Suns. I forgot about that. Not the worst loss in AFLW history, that going to Fremantle earlier, but still pretty bad. Carlton being Freo, I think that was a bit of a surprise at the time, but now it seems that Carlton are just a contender, and the close Sydney versus Adelaide game for that round, only a few points, and I think might have been a late goal by Adelaide by memory. Just
Uh,
looking at the match. No, no, sorry. Malloy kicked one late to get them within a kick, and then they just held off. So,
yes.
um, but yeah, again, that was a very back and forth game. Going to round 8 now. Um, just looking at that Hawthorn toweling up Fremantle, I remember Dad being absolutely upset that Fremantle didn't even fire a shot. Um, then we have what else going on? A few thumpings.
Yeah.
Richmond beating Adelaide. That's where it is. Yeah, you weren't here for that, but I do remember it. It was just one of those games where it was a bit scrappy. There was no doubt that both teams just struggled to convert. Um, and I think really it was just how solid Richmond was. I think in the midfield, I think Adelaide's midfield and sort of let them down from what I remember of this game. Uh, but
Um,
yeah, very big surprise
I do remember
considering.
checking the highlights for this game, and yeah, it was very much. It was very much like we just kind of hit a switch, late in the second half, and our midfield just kind of completely changed dynamic and completely shut down theirs. It was really out of character for kind of both teams to do that because, like, throughout a lot of this
Mm,
season, our midfield has just not been great, like, at all. And all of a sudden,
yeah.
we're finally in a position to actually execute on skill, because our skills have been really poor around the ground in general, and it's been really good to see them
Mm.
actually find a good gear.
Yeah, I'm looking at the stats. I actually lost the clearances, but I think they actually scored a bit more goals from clearances. I think that's what they were saying. Like Adelaide were very inefficient with their possession, obviously kicking 6-11.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so as I said, it was a bit of a surprise and sort of a bit of the shape of the Crows to come because they have been on a bit of a form slump. They are very much in danger of missing the finals as it stands now. As we go back to the game. Sorry, my internet's being a bit slow.
No, you're all good.
Yeah. Is there anything else this round? Um,
Not too
yeah,
much.
that's it. That's it, really. Because we're just going to quickly go this so we can talk about the finals and the ladder as it speaks. Um, again, uh, honestly, not too much this round either.
The one thing to note for round 9 though is it's the first week of Pride round. with round 9 and round
Oh
10 being the
yes,
two
of
pride
course.
rounds, of course.
It was, and oh, that's right. It was Fremantle's not come from behind win, but last minute win. With that goal by Angelique Statinet, who has kicked a few good goals this year. So again, one over Melbourne, which they needed to keep their slim, and I say slim, finals chances alive. Fremantle doing all they can in the back end of the season to do that,
Yes.
despite I would say arguably not having the worst season. It's just again the fixturing has been pretty rough for them. So as I said, they've only had probably 2 games I think that they really should have won, but yeah. So again, very clutch game. Very good final quarter. To go back to watch when I got back from Melbourne, I was very disappointed to miss out on that game. Then yeah, as I said, the next round, not so much just because I want to bring it up because I'm a meanie. Port Adelaide beating up Hawthorn, I thought was funny. Absolutely convincingly beat them. Port Adelaide pretty much out of the finals race,
Mm-hmm.
but have been really good in the back end of the season while they have got some players back. Indy Tahoe, sorry, leading the AFLW goal kicking this year,
Very impressive.
coming back from dual. I'm not sure if it's dual. I think she was injured in her draft year and then she re-injured.
Okay.
So again, she's been out of footy for a long time.
And to
So
Port's credit for this season, they have been one of the teams to be one of the highest scorers of this season alone. I think they've broken into the top 10 of highest scores like 3 times this season already, something like that.
yeah, and it's not like they've been necessarily that bad in some of their losses. It's just yeah, as I said, they haven't really. I think it was like that for those first 5 games where I think they went 2 and 3, and it just put them too much on the back foot,
Mm.
unfortunately. Again, with the AFLW fixturing only being 12 rounds, depending on who you play or don't play, i.e., North Melbourne, yeah, it can be a pretty big swing considering North is like 300%.
Yeah,
Like,
I follow a couple of people, a couple of big people of the AFLW side of things on X, quote unquote. And they
mm,
were talking a little bit about how it feels wrong that the season is still only 12 rounds when there's 18 teams, and that it really should be like an 18 round kind of system at this point.
yeah, as I said,
Like
like
it,
this does not feel like season what is it, season 9 of the competition? Or season 8?
I think this is 10, or is next year 10?
I'm not too
I
sure.
can't remember.
I think it was 2016 it came in, so yeah, I think next oh wait, there was a double anyway. So anyway. Um Either way too long for it to be like, who cares that the parody isn't, you know what I mean? It's like again, it's just like the AFL sort of saying, "Oh, it doesn't." I don't know. It's like got more to do with players' rights and all that, but you know what I mean. It's yeah, it's a bit concerning that they just don't care about at least trying to get an 18-game season. Honestly, I think there's a fair few people that like wants to like if they get 20 teams, like go for a 21-game season,
Yeah, like
and
I'm not
um,
opposed to them obviously not obviously making the season as long as the men's. I'm perfectly fine with them not having as many rounds as the men's. In fact, I think the men's rounds should be shorter. Um,
yeah,
but in saying that, I think it's only fair to, and we probably should just talk about this later instead of now, but I'm going to do it now anyway. It's only
that's
fair to make the season 18 rounds, so each team plays against each other once. If there are marquee games, you make them work into it however you can. Like obviously there's Dream Time. I
fine.
know there's key marquee Pride Round games, so you fit that in there as well. Um, and then shuffle the season to fit alongside the men's games. Like play some of these
Yeah.
games as double headers or as curtain raisers. Like if you want to get more eyes
Mm.
on the AFLW, that's the best way you do it.
And I think it's like one of those things where they say, oh, you can't just like run alongside. It's like there's a good for it to be differentiated, but I think it's sort of hard because the problem is like you could have it like a little alongside, but I think the biggest step with what they're finding is actually just directly after the grand final.
Yeah.
Where you're a bit fatigued. Obviously, if your team's in a grand final, you know, you're probably just like burnt out on emotions. Like it's hard to get back into the women's team, even if you are a very strong supporter of it. But you know what I mean? It's almost like you don't want there to be like a mid-season break for the men's grand final, but like the peak way to do it is to somehow like manage that, where you get like a bit of a break midway or something like that. But I don't think that would ever happen. I think it's just one of those things where there's nothing going to be perfect, but I think this is just not not acceptable, but you know what I mean. It's like it's very much. It just makes it feel like a bit of an afterthought with such a glaring problem in its fixturing.
Yeah, and we already know that there are some teams that are kind of like only in the AFLW at this point, just for the fact that they kind of have to be, rather than the fact that it's super financially viable for them. And it's not great to see, but the reality of it is that everything is expensive, and not all the clubs can actually afford to really properly manage things of this nature.
Yeah, as I said, I think it's just one of those things where some clubs have integrated it a lot better than others. Like you get, you know, stories of I know Port Fremantle are very well integrated. I think you were saying Richmond doing it
Richmond
very
has gotten a lot better. Sydney is very well integrated. I think they're one of the better ones.
yeah.
So there's definitely
But then you
there's
get
a
like
few, but then there are others.
yeah, as I said, I think it's like even like the story about, you know, in the Kangaroos premiership celebration, how I know it was the old codgers, but you know, that story coming out of that how they didn't want to celebrate the women's grand final,
Yeah.
even though it was like the only thing for North to celebrate in the last 30 years. You know what I mean? It's like how can you be salty about that? But yeah, as I said, it's like anyway, back we're a bit off topic now.
Yes. To get back on topic, I was at the Collingwood Richmond game on the Sunday. It was a very good win by us. I'm glad I got to see it. Fantastic game. Especially the second half. Second half was amazing. Katie Brennan just being absolutely clutch. That's what you call a great captain's game for sure.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things where Richmond. I think that was still like the thing where it was an impressive win, but they still feel like they were not that. They didn't have a high level of execution.
Yeah.
At times.
Our our
But
our
they
conversion to
just need
inside
someone to
50
stand up.
wasn't the greatest, but thankfully we had a good defensive wall to stop some of Collingwood's fight back. Obviously it did slip out a couple times, but I think we had very, very strong defensive players sitting in the right positions, and it was really, really impressive to see, actually.
Yeah, I remember there was a time I think it was like they had 10 inside 50s in a row for like one score or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That just sounds like
was,
Richmond in general, to be honest.
yeah, yeah, it gets a bit like that. But yeah, and then obviously, I guess because it was a close game, not that it was a game of note, Fremantle against GWS, that was honestly a shocking game. Fremantle had so much dominant, but just couldn't get through to him. Ended up kicking away, but I was just like, geez, Richmond, they look all right. Fremantle, not so much. I was a bit nervous going into the Saturday game this week. First, I should mention the other big result, Port Adelaide beating Adelaide in the showdown. Even though it was 7 points, it felt like a lot more convincing to Port Adelaide.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really strong performance. And as I said, I think just the way like it's up and down fixturing, you know, like finishing outside the 8 might not be the worst thing for Port because they're obviously still building in the right direction and they'll get the easier fixture, which is probably like almost could be the difference between like a top 4 spot. And yeah, as I said, so that was good. Very good performance by the girls there, especially in defense. They absolutely monstered Adelaide until really late.
Mm-hmm.
Fremantle against Richmond. probably one of the most impressive Fremantle performances I've seen. I thought it was going to be terrible once the first goal was there. I was like, man, that was too much easy movement by Richmond. Um, but they just denied entry after entry. And Richmond had a bit of play in the third quarter. Um, but yeah, as I said, Fremantle just shut it down. It was like defense, but it was of the midfield. They were just causing intercepts in the front, middle half of the ground.
Yep.
Ended up getting the job done there. Brisbane get the job done on Melbourne to secure another top four, I think, finish for them. Geelong keep their slim final saves against Western Bulldogs in a very funny splash ball.
Oh
I
yeah,
love a good splash
the
ball.
rain yesterday was horrible. We had 32 mil, which is I think the most rain that we've had
Yeah.
in a year. And it just came out of nowhere. It didn't entirely come out of nowhere, but it was
Mm.
so on and off the entire day.
Yeah, and obviously it made a bit of controversy in the Carlton GWS game where Carlton, because it was a storm delay, went on the exercise bikes, got to keep themselves warm while the Giants were stuck in a flooded change room. Not ideal.
No, that's pretty hor That's a pretty horrible look just from Carlton in general because it's their home ground. They should have the facilities to manage two teams. And if that's the kind of situation they're stuck in, it's not a good look.
Yeah, well, as I said, like, I don't think you have to have equal facilities, but you have to have paritable. Like,
Yes.
and if you don't have the facilities to facilitate, but you know what I mean. Like, if you're I don't think you should be allowed an advantage like that. Like, yeah, you should get home ground advantage, but like,
But that
I
should
think
be
the AFL's got
on
to.
ground. That should not be behind the
Yeah, I
scenes.
think in cases of delay, I think you should be able to like ban teams from going into their own gyms. But obviously it's a freak thing. Maybe they'll amend that in the off season. But yeah, it was a bit of a ridiculous situation. And that is it for the major games. I know we didn't cover everything, but obviously it's a lot to go through. And as I said, the parity just isn't quite there
That
this season in the
and
AFLW. There's a lot of
we don't have enough time to
lopsided
kind of
results.
pay attention to every game of the AFLW. Sadly, our October has been very busy with packs and other projects and things.
Hmm.
But we're trying.
I am keen for
But
the finals though.
yes, the finals are going to be very,
A,
very
because I'll
interesting.
actually watch North Melbourne again. It's like I've sort of been on a bit of a vendetta. Maybe after I've seen them smash Freo, but I'm like, man, like they're gonna make finals, and it's like you can be salty about him a bit. Like I'm not salty, but you know what I mean. It's like I think come finals, it's like I'm gonna watch him because it's like a historic team,
Hmm.
and he knows when they actually like maybe the AFL will try and step in, separate them, get a bit of parity. Maybe the Tassie will provide a bit of disruption to get but you know what I mean. I mean, it's like seeing the prime Chicago Bulls, um, prime Australia in the cricket or whatever.
Yeah,
Sometimes you just want to see what peak togetherness looks like in the AFLW this season. And when you got someone who is basically averaging the equivalent of like 42 possessions with Ash Riddell, 38, um, that's average possession per season. It might not be 38, but it's like, damn,
it's
generous.
she's extremely impressive. And
Yeah,
we're about to get a preview for what the finals, what a finals feel is going to look like with our first Friday night game of this round being Hawthorn and North Melbourne.
yeah, exactly. And honestly, I know North have actually played a fair few good good teams this season. Um, but yeah, Hawthorn might be the one that I think some people are slated. I still don't think, honestly, it's so weird. Like, I feel like it's almost like you almost don't want Hawthorn to win. You just want it to be close because it feels like when you do get like a loss like this, it just solidifies it. North goes on to like not drop a game.
Yeah,
Like, I'd rather North lose a final and then like go through this season undefeated. Um, but again, fairly prime Hawthorn. Don't think they've been dealing with too many injuries. I haven't checked the injury ladder for a moment, but I do know they've been fairly healthy this season. But yeah, as I said, it should be a good one. Played in Frankston, which is
yes,
funny.
yes, it is being played down on the coast. The entire of this, pretty much Hawthorn's home ground for the women's is Frankston, is Kinetic Stadium. I've been
Mm.
told, I've been told that it's actually not bad as a playing ground. Gets a little
Mm,
cold because Frankston is up against the bay. But otherwise, it's a decent ground. You think they would play it at Box Hill, but
mm.
I think that's more. I think due to the current behind the scenes stuff going on with the AFL purchasing Box Hill, that there might be a little bit of interference at the moment in regards to using that ground.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so next game is a fairly important game. And should be a good matchup. West Coast and Carlton. Both teams probably win and in. Carlton would need a lot to get out of the eight, where the Eagles could definitely miss, but would require a fair bit to go wrong. Adelaide would need to win, and Sydney would need to win by a lot, I think, for them to take over. Yeah, so for both teams, they just want to win. Maybe even pinch a home final. For Carlton, they would
Mm-hmm.
essentially lock in a home final. For the West Coast Eagles, they would require some other results, like St Kilda losing to the Western Bulldogs, or actually no, because yeah, they're higher than Carlton and they're playing Carlton. So yeah, okay, if they won, they would get a home final. So a very important game.
Yeah, it seems like it. The 9 p.m. game for us over in the east is kind of rough in terms of scheduling, but daylight savings will
mm,
do that to you.
yeah, exactly. As I said, it's just one of those things where, yeah, as I said, I forgot. Like I was like, oh, I gotta like pay attention to the West Coast game against Sydney. But then I looked at my phone and I was like, oh, it's gone because it started at 10. Um, I was a bit late to getting to it anyway. Um, but yeah, as I said, it was just like, oh crap, I forgot they start football early.
Yes.
Um, anyway, unfortunately, a bit of a dead rubber because I think Port's actually eliminated now. I don't think there's a mathematical possibility of them getting in, but yeah, they're playing the Giants. They just want to win for pride. I mean, I'd say the Giants, I suppose. Spoon Bowl, Richmond versus Suns. Richmond
Yes.
look like a competent team. The Suns, surprising to get a win, to be honest.
Yeah, if,
Um,
we were looking at this earlier, and it's like if the Suns win, they have to win by a big margin to get out of 18th. If
yeah,
Richmond win,
if
they have potential to jump the Giants if the Giants lose to Port, and they will finish at
mm,
16th. Otherwise, even if they lose by a slim, or if the Giants win and Richmond win, they pretty much stay 17th, second last. But even though most of the season hasn't been very good, I'm very happy with the fact that they had two very good performances and got two wins out of that, and I will not be opposed to a third.
yeah, exactly. I think it's a have to win for Richmond because, like I said, they've just got too much talent to be that low on the ladder. But at the same
Yeah,
time, it's hard in such a short season. Like they were obviously out of form. I think they did play better, but as I said, they just faced a gauntlet of Adelaide, which they notched a win out of, Melbourne,
North.
North Melbourne, and obviously playing Freo not too long after that.
Yeah.
After Collingwood, which was even then like Collingwood haven't been as terrible this year, so still have to work hard for that win. Also, I'm wrong. According to this graphic, Port Adelaide can actually make the finals,
Oh,
but
there you
they
go.
require
They require a
West
lot.
Coast to lose by a lot, Sydney to lose by a lot, beat Geelong more than beat GWS more than Geelong beat Melbourne,
Hmm.
um, and Adelaide to beat Fremantle, but not by too much.
So basically, they need the stars to align to get into the eight.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it will be the same with Geelong. Just switch Port winning to Port losing.
Yeah, it's fair enough.
Port actually no, just yeah. Anyway,
Anyway,
yeah.
Sydney
So
and Essendon down in Coffs Harbour, of all places.
yeah, Sydney really want to win because I said they actually have a solid chance of making it. As I said, if Sydney win and Adelaide lose, Sydney are very likely to make the finals. But yeah, as I said, there's a few other permutations that can happen. But yeah, as I said, so Sydney are probably the most likely to make it from these teams outside the 8. So
Mhm.
very important to get it done against Essendon, which has sort of been like one of the more middling teams. Definitely a bit much of a disappointment this year. Has some very bad losses. Um, so yeah, Geelong have to beat Melbourne at GMBA. Going to be a very tough ask to keep their slim chances alive, but they almost did it last year. So
True.
sort of the tale of the last 2 seasons is just starting off bad, but then getting a decent run home to almost make the 8. Um, Brisbane versus Collingwood. Brisbane should just wrap up a top 4 spot. St Kilda versus Western Bulldogs. Again, St Kilda just got to win it to get that home final. And Adelaide versus Fremantle. Pretty much an elimination final.
Honestly,
But
a really good game to finish out the season.
yeah, and as I said, it's got a lot of storylines. As I said, Adelaide sort of tanking, and Fremantle. The unfortunate thing is there is a scenario where Fremantle could just get locked out the 8, to where this might be a dead rubber for them. But yeah, they'll be trying to win. It'll be one of those ones where you just have phones off come Sunday. Um, actually, no. Oh yeah, St Kilda is the only game that could technically have an effect on that. But yeah, okay. So yeah, it might be tough for them, but yeah, we'll see.
Plausible,
Um,
but uh, unlikely more than likely is right.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, Freo needed a few more results to go the way last week to get there. But as I said, I just sort of wanted them there because they have an abysmal percentage of 82 after that absolute flogging back to back by Melbourne, North Melbourne and Brisbane. Um, as I said, that's why we said like you can have a team with Western Bulldogs that are like 115.9, but still not really a good team.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and as I said, you get some teams that are unlucky. I think even Gold Coast have actually faced uh, a chunk. I think they've faced North. They've faced Melbourne and a few others. So yeah, is what it is.
It is what it is. All right, let's jump over to the ladder now. And with one round remaining, North Melbourne, by far and away, best team in the competition. There is no doubt about that. Heard that all season long already. On 44 points and 317.9 percentage, which is ridiculous. Um,
Absolutely.
no team can jump them unless somehow Hawthorn pull out 2 wins in one round, which will not happen. But Hawthorn does currently sit in second with 118.3. Melbourne and Brisbane are tied on 32 points for third and fourth. Melbourne on 221.6 percentage, which is also ridiculously high. Um, and Brisbane on 161.7. So theoretically, it is possible for Melbourne to jump into second place. Um,
Mm.
but that'll be dependent on one, if Hawthorn can actually take down North, and two, if Melbourne can beat Geelong. Um,
Yep.
Fifth is Carlton with 28 points alongside St Kilda. Carlton on 113.3 percentage, St Kilda on 96.3 percentage. The West Coast Eagles, the Adelaide Crows, Sydney Swans, and Fremantle all on 24 points. The Eagles on 118.1 percentage, the Crows on 109.7 percentage, Sydney on 108.4 percentage, and Freo on 82.2 percentage. Probably the lowest percentage out of the top 13. However, it is all entirely feasible, as we have just discussed, for this top 8 to completely change next week, which is going to be really, really interesting to see. Port Adelaide and Geelong currently sitting on 20 points, 95.3 percentage for Port and 94.8 percentage for Geelong. The Western Bulldogs with 16 points sitting 13th at 115.9 percentage. Collingwood sitting 14th, 12 points alongside the Bombers. 62.3 percentage for the Pies and 58.6 percentage for Essendon. The Giants and Richmond both on 8 points, only winning 2 games so far. The Giants with 62.8 percentage and Richmond with 59.6 percentage, and the Suns sitting dead last with only 1 win to their name and 37.5 percentage.
Yeah, as I said, it's sort of funny. It's like there's some weird quirks where like Collingwood have won 3 games, but they've only scored 2 more than the bottom place Suns. So as I said, it's one of those ones where, yeah, as I said, Collingwood and Gold Coast remind me a lot of the Eagles and North Melbourne, like when they were like the two, by far the two worst defenses in the league. You've got like by far the two worst offenses in the league. It's just that Collingwood's actually been able to notch a few wins, all things considered.
Yeah, it's just it's been, from what I've been able to watch of the AFLW, it's been such a weird season. But we can just take North out of the equation just for a moment, and you look at everyone else. It's half of this season just doesn't really make much sense.
Yeah, as I said, you got Hawthorn sitting in second with 200 less points than third place Melbourne and fourth place Brisbane. Uh, but they've also, as I said, by far one of the most fragile seconds we've seen there. But also, the rise of Carlton, who have actually been pretty solid. Like they've had an easy-ish fixture, but they've been pretty reasonable. Again, that win against Freo sort of solidified their season. St Kilda, again, one of the weird teams in the eight. West Coast, again, proving after last season. And then just that drop off of Adelaide out of seemingly nowhere. In decent form halfway through the season and just fell off a cliff. Could even fall out the eight. Whereas Sydney, Fremantle, and Port Adelaide have had decent moments in this back half of the season. I guess Geelong too.
The interesting thing that I'm looking at is, even if the Crows beat Freo, it's not a win and you're in situation,
No.
because the Swans could still jump them, the Eagles could still jump them, depending on how much percentage the Crows make up.
Yeah.
They
Well, the
will
Eagles would lock them out more.
yes, pretty much all, like the Swans, the Crows, and the Eagles could all. Funnily enough, they're all birds. They could all jump St Kilda, because of St Kilda's low percentage, unless they're able to make up a huge amount against the Dogs. Um, and maybe specifically on the Eagles, they could possibly jump Carlton as well. Oh well, actually, they would jump Carlton. Sorry, if the Eagles beat them this weekend. I completely forgot that they were playing each other. Ignore me. So they at least, at minimum, the bottom half of the top eight is still very very much in shift. The top eight,
Yeah.
give or take, is probably settled. But that will depend mostly on Brisbane beating Collingwood, Melbourne beating Geelong, and pretty much Carlton beating the Eagles. Oh, actually, no,
Yeah,
no, it's never
exactly.
mind. Never mind. Ignore that because the percentage is way too low. Yeah,
Yeah, I was
it's
gonna say.
just going to be all dependent on, whether Hawthorn, Melbourne, and Brisbane beat North, Geelong, or Collingwood to kind of
Yeah.
shift that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I said. It's like, yeah, there's been pains for this season. It has been good to see that the crowds have sort of risen because it was a bit concerning at the first half of the season, but crowds have picked up a bit more. Again, after that fatigue of what was it felt like a very long 2025 men's season. I don't know why this year felt like a bit more of a slog, but maybe that could have been a me
We can
thing.
blame
But
the
it's been
Cyclone for extending the season for one more game.
yeah, maybe. Plus opening round, the buys,
Yeah,
all adds up.
but well,
Um,
we talked about this a couple of weeks ago when the men's season wrapped up. And it's like, does
mm,
the men's season need to change its length? And there have been opinions of it, and people will continue to have those opinions of it. Whether the AFL does change it or whether they keep it as is, that remains to be seen. But honestly, I would just like to see both the codes be more in line with each other, because you
yeah, and
notice,
as I
and
said, I don't think they have to be parallel.
that's probably why the
Yeah,
crowds jumped up post the men's season, is because there was no men's footy on, so people had more time to go to the women's games.
yeah, exactly. And I think it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, I think it'll be really good to have the women's finals always stay on their own. I think that's important.
Agreed.
And I do think that the connection with the smaller grounds is important.
Agreed.
So honestly, I think curtain raisers should be like one of those, like not every game is a curtain raiser, but um, for the ones that line up well, as I said, it's a chance to introduce another audience to it. Maybe even bring some of that audience. It goes both ways. But I do think it's important for the AFLW to keep its identity too, because I think it's just one of those things where, like, you hear it around the grounds. It's just, I know you don't always want to market it just towards kids, but I think the section of, and it's hard to say because it is majoritively male fans, but like, that less aggressive, vocal portion of the crowd just makes it so much easier to take the kids.
Mhm.
Even just like the fact that most of these grounds are limited to where they sell alcohol too. It makes a big difference.
It
So
does.
again, I think they've got to keep their identity. I think they do have to realize that a lot of the community spirit is worth keeping. So you can't just make every game a double header.
Yes, of course.
But I think they are remiss if they don't
Well,
have. They're remiss if they don't at least take a look and try to attempt
yeah, like what they
to
can do,
fix
what they
this
could
sort of
do
lull.
is if they make it's extended to an 18-game season, make the first
Mm,
9 rounds in line with the men's season, then put at a mid-season bye after round 9 for all 18 teams, and put that the
mm,
weekend of the men's grand final, and
yeah.
then continue the rest of the women's season after that.
Yeah, that would be something I would propose. So, like, even if you could negotiate it for 2 weeks, it would probably even be
Oh
better. But as I said, I think that's a bit hard with like player management and all
yeah,
that. So,
and then the other thing is
um,
like trying to ensure the. I guess the other issue that they have to try and balance is trying to make it not clash also with the second tier games, so the VFL, Sandfall, the
mm,
Waffle. Um,
yeah,
that's the harder part as well as trying to balance those as well because
yeah, because
the
as I
crowds
said,
for those games also aren't that high. They're about the same level as the AFLW at the moment, maybe smaller.
yeah, and
Um,
I think you find there's a lot of intersection as well. Like
mhm,
people that like community football because of the atmosphere, like again, there's a lot of overlap because again, people go because it's like for people that have sensory issues,
mhm.
like the AFLW and Waffle is great. Whatever your lower
The
code
second
is,
tiers, yeah.
because yeah, as that they sort of realize that and they actually like well, at least I've my experience in the Frio games, they actually give out sensory packs, which I find very cool. Um, there's like a little area you can go to, like there's like you get a bag, you have to return it, but you know what I mean. It's like if you just forgot to bring or you need to, it's really good. So shout out to the AFLW for doing that. I don't know if it's around every ground, but at least for Frio, well done. And also, as I said, it's just, yeah, it's just so, it feels so much more accessible. Well, I say that. Well, yeah, as I said, the old grounds, like not literally accessible. There's probably some improvements to be there, but
Oh yeah,
yeah,
there's definitely a
as I
couple
said, but
grounds that aren't as accessible as you might want them to be in terms of disability accessibility.
yeah,
But in terms
exactly.
of yeah, you're right. In terms of that community feel, the AFLW has that in spades. The VFL has all the second tier talent, second tier level.
Mm,
They have that as well because it is held mostly at smaller grounds. Um,
yeah,
but there is two entirely different community feels across both codes, and
yeah. And I think the
it's
final
hard.
point I want to finish on with the AFLW is that no matter what happens with the AFL, because I've had my grievances this season, I think this is like the least interested I've been in an AFLW season, and I know it's not its fault. Because
It's
I actually think like a lot of the games have improved.
it's
Um,
it has like the fact that the talent has gone up, not just obviously in North,
hmm,
but across the field. A lot of the talent has gone up. Scoring has obviously gotten better. We've seen multiple records
yeah,
being broken already. Um, so we know that it is tracking on a good on a good scale
yeah.
question mark. I don't know. But
It's
yeah,
just what I've
there's
said like
is it
before,
like a
where
systematic issue?
I actually value parity over scoring. Like as I said, there've been some like decent scoring games when you add up the two teams. It's just one of them scored 70 and the other one scored 10.
Hmm.
It's just like that's hard to watch. But yeah, as I said, it's one of those things where no matter what happens, it's like it's always important to ask yourself is like, what can I get invested in? And there's so many storylines, as I said, for Port Adelaide, someone like Indy Tahau, being an absolute revelation. For the Kangaroos, even if you're like, oh, well, they're, so good, so well off. But like Ash Riddell, what she's doing, like you can't just say it's what she's doing in the because we've seen dynasty teams like we've sseen like Dynasty Hawthorn, like she is better statistically in her own competition than a Simon Black. She is better than a Sam Mitchell or Luke Hodge. Not stats wise compared to her peers.
Yeah.
Like it is ridiculous what she's doing. So there's that. As I said, Hawthorn, their development into again, just somehow making these top fours, even though they don't quite look the best, but as I said, they're getting the most out of their teams. Brisbane and Melbourne staying in the guard, and you've always got these teams pushing up. And I just think, as I said, even for Fremantle, like this stupid late charge, as I said, had this fairly hard fixture, some disappointing results, and yet can still make finals. It's just like, that's what's got me excited over the last 2 weeks. So as I said, it's always important to remember, like, just because the league's being crap or just because you might not be enjoying it as much as you can be, like, you can still always try and get excited. And that's the thing, is like, I think these small moments are what you gotta like look for when you are experiencing a bit of football fatigue at this time of the year, but you still want to be invested or support the AFLW or whatever code
Yes.
you're following that has like a post thing. And to finish it off, I think we got to talk about it. It was sort of a Reddit post, a couple of Reddit posts that made me aware of this, but it's sort of a mini race to 100 AFLW career goals. And it will probably be decided this round. On 98 goals, we have Kate Hoare playing for Melbourne, and with 97 goals, who kicked 0.3 last game in North Melbourne's thumping of, I think it was GWS. Jasmine Garner, kicker of the first goal of AFL football for Collingwood, and leading goal scorer for Port Adelaide and Fremantle, Gemma Houghton, one behind that on 96. So, as I said, obviously North have the advantage of playing first. But wouldn't it be amazing if in the last round, all three got to 100? Like, that would be something special. Like, I know it's not likely. I think that probably either Hoare or Garner's going to make it. I don't think Houghton could actually. Away GWS. I guess it depends on the weather in Sydney. But yeah, as I said, like, and all three really good. Kate Hoare, probably one of the more underrated players in terms of key forwards. Just always been up and about. I think won the leading goal kicker medalist once, if not twice. And Jazz Garner, obviously, being a very long serve and one of the biggest pools that North were able to get that I was talking about before. And Gemma Houghton, as I said, Fremantle still have not been able to overtake her goal kicking tally. And she's just taken on such a mother hen role at Port Adelaide. Whilst their new forward shine, she's still being able to kick the goals. So just so I end on like a very positive note, like if there's anything that, you're like, your team's not even in it, maybe you support GWS or the Suns or Richmond. There's just something else to look after for if you're not that interested in what order the finals are going to be. There's still something to watch in that. And I will be excited to try and, watch as much of those games as possible because of that.
So I found the actual article that originally pointed this out. This was posted a week ago, so it doesn't include the games just gone. But essentially, the current AFLW top 10 leading goal kickers in history are Jasmine Garner, Kate Hoare, Gemma Houghton, Danielle Ponter from the Adelaide Crows, Katie Brennan, obviously currently at Richmond, formerly the Bulldogs, Jessie Wardlaw, currently St Kilda, formerly Brisbane, Dakota Davidson, currently at Brisbane, Chloe Malloy, currently Sydney, formerly Collingwood, Talia Randall, currently North Melbourne, formerly of the Brisbane Lions, and then Taylor Harris, of course, currently at Melbourne, formerly of Carlton and Brisbane.
A bit ironic that Collingwood featured twice in that and yet have this bad 2 years of scoring. But sorry, Collingwood fans. Yeah.
But no, it's definitely
Anyway.
it's definitely interesting to see who's going to make it first. And if all three of them happen to make it in this round alone, granted, Horton does have a little bit of ground to make up just to kind of equal, just to make it. It's definitely doable. But
Yeah.
it would be incredible for the AFLW.
It's one of those players that can definitely do it though. If she's accurate, like 4 goals for her is easy. She's just not the most accurate player. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if she was leading in scoring shots, to be honest. Not that I would know enough about the careers of Kate Hoare and Garner, but I remember Hoare being fairly accurate. I'm not sure about Jazz, but yeah. So again, yeah, just 3 fantastic women. All servants of their own clubs, even though a couple have shifted. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It doesn't really matter who makes it first, but it'll be interesting to see if there's only one person going to do it and they can be the official crowned first one to do it,
Mm-hmm.
or if all three and they just all sort of go down in the history books.
Yeah, it's gonna be very, very interesting to pay attention to this weekend. Speaking of this weekend, that pretty much brings us to the end of the episode because there isn't really too much more for us to cover this week. So I will ask you, what are you up to this weekend or the
What
week
am I
ahead?
up to? Um, Not too much, not too much. As I said, doing a little prep for something. I know I'm doing something on Saturday. I've just completely blanked. So, yeah, I said apart from watching AFLW, I remember what I'm doing. If I'm doing something that exciting, I'll say on the socials. But yeah, I'm drawing a blank here.
I've actually got a very busy weekend ahead. So I will be going to the Richmond Gold Coast Suns game with my brother because I still have 2 tickets left as part of my membership. So I will get to use those, which will be great. And then that night, Saturday night, I will be seeing Oasis of all bands live at Marvel
Oh,
Stadium.
nice. I mean, honestly, I didn't really see you as much of an Oasis fan,
Oh,
but
I love myself a good Wonderwall. No, I do actually
uh,
quite enjoy Oasis's music. Um,
yeah,
one
I'm
of the older
definitely getting a mixed
classics
bag.
that are very easy to get into.
Yeah, I honestly, as I said, Oasis is sort of a meme at this, like for
They
my
are.
generation more specifically. Not just because of the whole wonderful things, like when you were living in peak Noel and Liam Gallagher, they were one of the premier crap talkers of music. Noel probably maybe was self-aware. Like I think Noel knew he was a bit of a jerk,
Hmm.
but sort of like also was aware of it, whereas Liam, I think, sort of drank his own bathwater. Um, anyway, but yeah, as I said, I still think like "Don't Look Back in Anger" is probably one of the best British pop songs of all time, even
It,
though I don't rate Oasis that much.
it is probably one of my favorite Oasis tracks, I would think. And then on Sunday, I am considering, depending on if my best friend is free, we may go to the St Kilda Western Bulldogs AFLW game and just round out their season and see if the St Kilda girls can notch a game into the finals.
Exactly, exactly. As I said, it'll be their debut into the finals, I'm pretty sure. So, fingers crossed for them.
And yeah, that pretty much rounds out the episodes. Thank you also so much for coming and hang out with us this week. Apologies that it's a little bit short, but again, we don't only have so much to talk about in the men's off season, and there isn't also that much news coming out of the women's at the moment, apart from the games previously gone and the games coming up, of course. Please go check out the socials, of course, as for anything else that we may get up to. Even though I'm not doing much streaming at the moment, but please go check out my socials just for anything else that we're up to, HSP or otherwise. Other than that, we will hopefully see you all next week for episode 82. Hope you all have a wonderful week ahead, and we will see you then. Take care.